Our reading today is from Isaiah chapter 11, starting at the first verse. The branch from Jesse. A shoot will come up from the stump of Jesse. From his roots a branch will bear fruit. The Spirit of the Lord will rest on him, the Spirit of wisdom and of understanding, the Spirit of counsel and of might, the Spirit of the knowledge and fear of the Lord. And he will delight in the fear of the Lord. He will not judge by what he sees with his eyes, or decide what he hears with his ears. But with righteousness he will judge the needy. With justice he will give decisions for the poor of the earth. He will strike the earth with the rod of his mouth. With the breath of his lips he will slay the wicked. His righteousness will be his belt, and faithfulness a sash around his waist. The wolf will live with the lamb. The leopard will lie down with the goat. The calf and the lion and the yearling together, and a little child will lead them. The cow will feed with the bear. Their young will lie down together, and the lion will eat straw like the ox. The infant will play near the cobra's den, and the young child will put its hand in the viper's nest. They will neither harm nor destroy on all my holy mountain, for the earth will be filled with the knowledge of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. This reading is one that is often used at Christmas, and many churches use an actual tree to illustrate what has come to be known as the Jesse tree. It's literally a family tree, and a family tree is something that we may use to show our family, our parents, our grandparents, etc. There is a lot of interest in the programme. Who do you think you are? Why? Because people are interested in their family, what has influenced them possibly, where they've come from, where their parents have come from. And sometimes those celebrities who are shown on the programme find out something they didn't know, or something that was really surprising, and it also may show something that explains a part of their upbringing. So the Jesse tree is about the genealogy of Jesus, his family tree on Joseph's side. Who was Jesse? He was the father of King David, and the gospel writers were very eager to show that Jesus was brought up in a family where his father was descended from this royal line. If you look up the first chapter of Matthew in the New Testament, you will see the genealogy of Jesus written there, and it's very interesting to read, possibly not what we might expect. There are very different people from very different areas of social life included there. And this is the part of Jesus' story. He would have been brought up knowing, because his ancestors were important. The history of the Jewish people is important. And in a similar way, knowing our story is important. And like Jesus' story, it's not the whole of us, but knowing something of our family can help us to understand about ourselves. It's only a part, but it's an important part. And that is why it's important to look at the Jesse tree and the story of those who have come before, in both Jesus' story, but also who may have an influence on us today. So I thought it'd be good to look at these important characters from the Bible and imagine hanging a symbol on the tree for them. We'll start with Adam and Eve, and the obvious symbol, of course, is the apple. It reminds us of the fact that we can get tempted and there will be consequences to our actions. So by remembering the apple, we acknowledge that this happens to all humans, and we need to be forgiven in order to be able to walk with God again, and that by sending his Son, God shows us that he forgives us and wants better for us. The next person we remember is Noah, and the symbol could be the ark or the rainbow. Noah was called by God to make an ark to save the different species of animals, because again, human beings were making a mess of this world. Nothing changes, does it? But I want to put a rainbow on the tree, because whenever I see a rainbow, it reminds me that God will get angry, he does get frustrated, but he also forgives us. And this rainbow is his acknowledgement that we are frail and we need guidance. but he has a promise for us that he will always be there, helping us, guiding us, if we let him. Abraham was the next person to remember, and when he was called, he was 75 years old, and his wife Sarah and nephew Lot were called to move to Canaan, a land certainly not expected for them to live in. And a walking stick is used to remember the journey and the age that he was. It reminds us that no matter how old we are or where we live, God has a plan, and we should be open to his wishes for us, to listen to what he wants us to do and where he wants us to be. Something that isn't always easy for us, because we know what is best for us. We know far better than God what we need to do. But the walking stick reminds us the dependence that we need to have on God and his plan for us. Jacob and his ladder is the next symbol. Why? Well, Jacob cheated his brother Esau out of his inheritance, and when he had realised what he had done, he ran away. And in a dream he had this vision of a ladder going between earth and heaven. It tells us of the wrestle he had with God, and that God wanted Jacob to be forgiven and now to do his work. He was then told that God's blessings would be upon him when he realised that he had to follow God's plan. He realised that God would be with him and would watch over him. A reminder to us all that God does have a plan and he really wants to bless and walk with us. But the stick reminds us of our dependence on him. We only have a few left to look at, and Joseph is the next one with his coat of many colours. He was shown favours by his father, and his brothers became very jealous, and as I'm sure you know, they plotted to get rid of him. But Joseph was given a chance to help not just his father and brothers and family, but all his people of where he came from. And it's a reminder to us that whatever a situation and however bad it seems, God is there. We will make wrong decisions, but we will also be given a chance to put it right if we follow God's guidance and plan. Moses and the tablets of stone with the 10 Commandments are next, the rules that we are told to follow. And when Jesus came, he revised those rules slightly to 2 commandments. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your body. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second, love your neighbour as yourself. And we have to look after ourselves in order to respect ourselves and God's creation of us, but also in order to help others and this world, because if we don't, how can we look after anything else? David with his harp or sword. I've chosen a sword because he was a fighter, and it reminds us that we have to fight for some things sometimes. We cannot just sit back and let things happen, possibly even thinking that God will sort it. Well, God tells us that we are his hands, his feet, his mouth, his eyes, his ears, and we have a responsibility to act in his name and fight for the things we think need changing. Because if God is with us, we will change things, even if it sometimes takes longer than we really want. Solomon, son of David. He was considered very wise, and so an owl is often used to show his wisdom. A couple of weeks ago, I was at St Anne's, and the talk was on Solomon's wisdom and how he had to decide the outcome between 2 women who were in dispute over a surviving baby. The talk is on the Facebook page if you're interested, but very briefly, these 2 women had had babies, but sadly one had died in the night, and the mother whose baby had died tried to take the other woman's baby. Solomon made a judgment after hearing their stories, and he decided, and it's horrible, but he said the baby will be cut in half, and each mother can have a part. The true mother said, "No, give the baby to the other woman," because she couldn't bear being killed. And of course, whereas the other woman couldn't bear anyone being happy because of her own distress, Solomon realized who the true mother was, who was prepared to sacrifice her own happiness for the safety of the baby. Good call by Solomon, I suggest. And the last person is Joseph, the father of Jesus. A hammer or a wood plane might be his symbol, to show that we have to work at things. We have been given the skills and ability to do something with our lives, to show the power and goodness of God and Christ. And we need to use those skills with God's guidance to improve our world, both locally and beyond. I just want to finish by suggesting that the remarkable thing about these people is that God used them in different ways to bring about his kingdom in the fulfillment of his promise in Christ. In this way, we see the continuity of God's love, patience, grace across the centuries, to the most unlikely people in the midst of their failures and difficulties. Sometimes, with our not-so-lovely lives, we might wonder whether we can ever come close to being useful to God. Yet we should not be surprised that God does choose us and use us. And as we seek to follow him more closely, the more we know that we are part of his amazing plan. Just like those descendants and ancestors of Jesus.